Hi, it's Ian, and welcome back to my 30 Days of Knife Skills. This is day 28, and I am working with Daikon, one of my favorites. So with Daikon, there's a few different techniques. One is going to be katsuramuki, which I talked about with the cucumber video. So katsuramuki, it's notoriously challenging for good reason. And the whole idea is to get a nice sheet of daikon. And the first step is to actually get the peel off, but then you continue so that you're able to get more and more to the center and get one long sheet, and then with that you get nice julienne on the cross section. Very, very, very fine cross section. So it's not something I do a lot, but if you are going to do it on daikon, which is a little bit harder than cucumber, then the knife that's used in Japan is this knife. This is usuba. So usuba just means thin blade, and the idea with katsuramuki so there's the peel gone. The idea with a katsuramuki, with the usuba, it's a very thin blade and the profile is completely straight here. So it should allow you to get the best angle, and what you're trying to do is to move this knife back and forth and turn the ingredient with your left. So I'll try to find where I left off. It's right there. The outer layer is always firmer, so after you go through around once or twice, it usually becomes softer and easier to deal with. This also requires an extremely sharp knife, and one of the most challenging things is that as soon as you make an uneven cut and then you go around the second time, it's still uneven. So even if you have good technique on that second time around, something like this, you might find a thinner spot or a thicker spot. That's one of the most challenging things. So we could continue doing this, but for now, let's just pretend that this is all we want. And it's as simple as stacking it up. And there's two ways. So the fibers are going this way. The daikon was like this. Going this way will create a different mouthfeel than cutting across the grain. So I usually go this way, lengthwise. And then this is something I would put in cold water, even ice water, and let it kind of firm up and crisp up for about 5 or 10 minutes or so. The other cut, of course, is to go across the grain this way. So this will be a little bit more tender, and the shape won't stay as straight as this kind. So I usually prefer it to be like this. It's going to be nice and thin anyway, so I prefer it to kind of have a little bit of structure as opposed to this style. This will be a little bit closer to graded, going across the grain. So that is basically katsuramuki on daikon. Commercially nowadays, Of course, there's chefs in Japan who still do this all the time, but there's also machines that you just put this piece in there. There's a roller, there's a blade, and you just rotate your hand and you just get a sheet in a few seconds, and then they would take that, put it on the board, and cut it with a knife. So that's a way that a lot of people are doing it nowadays in Japan, I see. But what's much easier than doing that is, of course, using a mandolin. It's a different, obviously we're getting a different cross section. We're not just getting the outer layers gradually coming in. We're getting more of a cross section this way, but completely even. This is quite thin, but of course I could adjust this a little bit and make it even thinner. So I think this is much more practical, unless you want to always be practicing your katsuramuki. This is much more practical to very quickly use a mandolin, and then you can use your regular chef's knife, stack it up, and same thing. Extremely even, very nice. It's not the same thing. It's a different technique, but it's very close and extremely so much easier to do that. So of course we can use this technique where you use a combination of mandolin and knife to get these really fine julienne, like things like carrots and other things like that. Of course, that's another thing we can do. Some other cuts that we might do, if we go a little bit more toward treating it like how we would with carrots, cut the top and the bottom off, and then use the peeler to peel off. Nobody really likes to eat daikon peel. So daikon is one of those things that it's quite amazing. Long cooked, short cooked, cut big, cut small, raw, grated. It's good in all those ways. So very, very versatile. It's one of those things that I feel like has a lot of nutrition, and I get these kind of cravings of daikon. So I just, if nothing else, I want to make a soup, maybe a miso soup, and just put some daikon in there and just have that. It feels very nourishing. So sometimes I will do a roll cut with daikon if I'm going to cook it in a soup for a long time, just like we would with carrots and other things that we use the roll cut or nangiri. Other times I will cut it in half and just do this shape. Simple half moon shape. So I might do that to toss into the soup, let it boil for 5 to 10 minutes before adding other ingredients. Just needs a little bit of head start. I might do the same thing, but with a little longer shape. Something like this. If I want it, for example, Japanese hot pot, it's a little easier to grab with chopsticks. It holds up a little bit longer because it's a longer shape, so I might do this shape as well. Very common shapes for me to do that. Otherwise, it might be sticks for raw presentation, along with other raw vegetables like cucumber and carrots and celery and things. So this kind of shape. It can be good like that, especially with miso. Or large dice, something like that. That would be good for a little bit quicker cook. It'll cook a little bit more quickly than some of these other bigger pieces. And I might do that to match the shape with other things that have this kind of a rough, larger dice. We could go, of course, smaller with this. I don't usually have any need to dice this. So that would be like a fine. That's something that I don't really see any use for with daikon. Normally, if I want that kind of thing, it'll be the grater. Grated daikon is so good. And that's what I would be doing. So if I'm dicing, it's usually about this size. This is for particular kind of application of eating raw, either as a garnish or mixing it with other things that are kind of long, like noodles. Longer cooks, and then sort of intermediate, medium cooks. I don't really use sheets like this. I don't really have that many uses. Maybe I might, if I was making summer rolls, uncooked rice paper wrappers, that might be good to lay on the bottom, and then you can roll your ingredients. So one last thing, I might have mentioned this before, but one common use of this in Japan is to clean your knife after you're done with it. So it's very common to put a little bit of cleanser on the knife and then have this handle here and just have a quick way to clean your knife safely, and you're just using this extra piece that you would normally be tossing anyway. So that's one tip if you have some cleanser and you want to clean your knife at the end. Yeah, that's something that's common in Japan. So it's it for daikon. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next one.